As Lily mentioned, my talk is about building tiny custom web maps, no server required. I'll step through who I am pretty quickly. I see a lot of folks in the audience I have met before, not my first time at this conference. And as Lily mentioned, I live here in Seattle, also lived in the Bay Area for a long time. I am currently looking for work, so especially like freelance stuff, in product management, product design, anything related to maps. So if you have ideas, hit me up. And what I'm gonna show you here in a couple of slides is a little demo. It was a little thought experiment that I had. But first I'm gonna tell you what the goals of that thought experiment are. I wanna empower all cartographers to make digital maps. And I wanted to come up with an exercise that would really put the fundamental pieces of that in people's hands so that you can understand them in a way that you can't if you don't have direct experience, say from a job or something else where you're working with a very large team and really get to see how this stuff operates at scale. So what I'm gonna do here in this talk is share a demo with you that you can take home and play around with. And in the spirit of that monthly map challenge that hits us all in November, I also included a share page so that if you do come up with something or come up with your own example, you can share it back. This is also in the spirit of Practical Cartography Day, as it was when I first started coming to this conference, where there was like a lot more like hands-on demo-y stuff that we would all do. Obviously not time for that in 12 minutes, but just wanted to do it anyway. So in that spirit, I'm just gonna spend the next 12 minutes explaining to you and trying to convince you what's in this demo, but that's fine. All right, so how am I going to go about attempting this exercise of demonstrating to someone who doesn't necessarily have the experience, a cartographer who doesn't have this experience, how modern webs work? Well, I'm gonna ask you to get on GitHub, and that's pretty fundamental and essential. I'm gonna ask you to set up a local development environment, and I'm gonna ask you to get to know PMtiles, which I ran into Brendan Liu on the hallway on the way in here. He's the guy behind PMtiles, and he's psyched at the momentum that that little technology is generating. But that's what allows us to build tile maps without having to mess with AWS accounts and PostGIS and tile servers and things like that. I'm going to ask you to play around with this idea that I have of incorporating reference layers as opposed to incorporating a base map. Those of you who know me may know I have an extreme antipathy for the whole concept of base maps. Maybe even share it. We can get a drink later and talk about how awful the whole concept of a base map is. But so by that I mean, like, I have examples in this demo of how do you just pull in some labels that you need, but you're not otherwise going to include in your data set. Really, I'm going to ask you to kind of see in this example, like imagine in this example, how what I've put in here is really pretty intentionally intended to show you how maps fit in the modern cloud-based environment. And get that context from this example, because I think that that's really missing from a lot of the educational exposure and other things that we get, even if you went to a grad program in cartography where you learned something about making web maps. I think that's sometimes missing. So I'll flash this QR code. Don't worry if you don't feel like grabbing it right now. I'll post it in Slack, of course, but here it is. Or you can just search for Web Map Starter Kit on GitHub and get it there. There's copious amounts of words in the README, but I probably didn't cover your question, so feel free to bring it up and ask me if it's not there. I'm just gonna soldier on with explaining a little bit more about why I did this and what this exercise on this website that you're all going to now is about. This was inspired by my mentor group this year. And also just in general, my experience of having seen a lot, I feel like there's really a proliferation, a much broader proliferation of cartography, web-based cartography portfolios that people are passing, like especially new grad job seekers are passing around now. And there's just so much talent out there, but there's so many web pages showing endless examples of beautiful print maps. And print is not dead. I'm not saying that print is dead. It's going to be here for a long time, but a lot of the growth that's happening in our industry is online, is happening with digital maps. And cloud native digital development is really, I think, in many ways the future where the growth is in our industry. And and when I've been in hiring positions and I see those portfolios, it's really hard to know if that person has really the skills or the knowledge to be equipped for a job in tech, say, because just a portfolio of print maps, no matter how beautiful and good they are, doesn't necessarily tell me that. I also was inspired by this exercise by just realizing there's no good place to send people. When I was trying to tell advise the mentor group that I had and how to learn this stuff, I would send them somewhere and then I would look at it and I'd be like, there are so many holes in this tool that's being promoted on LinkedIn or whatever it is. There's so many just fundamental gaps that I would fall into, that anyone would fall into. It's really hard to know where to start. It's not even because there's a lack of. There's almost too much information now. You just drown in the amount of information that's out there. So I created this little demo with that in mind as well. And then just to stand up on my soapbox one more time, I really, really have felt for a long time that in this industry, especially with digital maps, so much of the conventions have been defined by developers, and it shows. And so if you need another compelling reason to participate and get on GitHub and just push through whatever, learn some new workflows, I think there really is more meaning that can be brought into the industry of building these maps by people who really deeply understand cartographic conventions. And so I would encourage you all to get there. I need some water, which is why my voice is cracking. I'm not actually crying. I don't know why that happened. So this is also informed by, thank you so much. This is also informed by me looking back at my own personal portfolio from 12 years ago. These are some maps that I rehabbed. They were built with TileMill in 2012, and they were live on the internet until 2020 when Mapbox deprecated support of MapTiles version 0, and there was really no place for them to go. So I rebuilt them, largely with the method that I showcase in this repo that you're seeing. I'm in the process of rebuilding them, and it's all possible. So, it's like, I'm cringy. I actually had this at the end of my presentation originally because it's kind of embarrassing, my student map projects, but just to prove that it can be done. If you too have some ancient TileMill maps that are now showing nowhere, then you can use the method that I worked out in that repo to bring them back to life. A few more plugs for the choices that I made in including and kind of setting up things the way that I did. Why GitHub? Why am I insisting on that, aside from the obvious of it's just a very commonly used tool in this space? It's a really easy place to host your portfolio. For anyone who doesn't know, GitHub on the back end is Jekyll, which is one of the best things you can use for your personal website. So the fact that you can upload some PMtiles to your GitHub account and then just host them out is just an added bonus to all of that. There's lots of other benefits. So many people in this room already know this, but just to say, GitHub is a great place for collaboration, and there's just, I use it all the time for preventing myself from going down all those rabbit holes, that are calling out to you, just, creating issues and doing all sorts of task management and collaborating around how the task is done. And then the last thing is just having repos makes you look smart. So. I also used MapLibre GLJS in this demo. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's the obvious thing to use, but it might be worth saying, like, why not something like D3? Because D3 is great for information visualization and certain types of data journalism. But every map that you see, every map in every platform and application that you see out there is based on this fundamental tile infrastructure. And learning that and really kind of familiarizing yourself with that will lay the groundwork for anything that you want to get a job in, not to be boring like that. Why PMtiles? So as I alluded to earlier, and as you can you learn more about from reading this demo page that I've set up, PMtiles, you can upload a PM, it's just a file archive, really, and you can upload it up to a gig to your GitHub repo, so that's quite a lot of map data. There isn't really a way, you can't do raster and vector, but you can do either one. We'll host either one and really solve some major problems that you would otherwise need a tile server for. There's a lot more to say about PMtiles, and if anyone was here this morning and heard Brandon's talk, he's going all sorts of directions with this format. But I'm not affiliated with them necessarily. I just find it to be very useful in this context. And why is understanding style sheets important? These are a really essential component, especially of understanding how vector tiles work. For anyone who hasn't worked with vector tiles, the style sheet controls everything that the renderer needs to know in order to make your map. And so understanding this, I made some choices about how to include this for the purposes of illustration, but it is a really essential component. And understanding how to take it apart is really useful to my mind for what I was alluding to earlier about why I hate base maps so much. If you can take it apart, you can put it back together and you can use just the parts that you need. And then you can do some really interesting things as a cartographer instead of just having to inherit somebody else's logic and somebody else's stylistic choices. Oh yeah, and I did say in here, I really hate base maps. Make that I really hate base maps point they can help me do this project so they can go back to Gehenna, which is Yiddish for hell, where they belong. I can't wait to see your examples. I hope you'll check out my repo, and if this sparked any thoughts for you, I hope you'll come find me and talk to me more.